grew up in a relatively quiet suburb, the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors, and the loudest thing at night was usually just the crickets. After college, I moved away for a while, but when my dad passed away, I came back to help my mom and ended up staying. The house I'm living in now isn't my childhood home. It's a rental, but not just any rental. It's one of those houses that sits oddly at the end of a cul-de-sac, tucked between two larger homes, almost like it was an afterthought in the neighborhood's design. A strange little two-story with a narrow yard and windows that never seemed to line up evenly. When I first moved in, I brushed off how weird it felt inside. I figured it was just me adjusting. The ceilings upstairs felt lower than they should have been, and the hallways were narrow enough that I sometimes had to turn my shoulders slightly when carrying laundry. But the rent was cheap, and at the time, that was enough. The first month went by without incident. Then, one night, I woke up around 3 in the morning to what I thought was the sound of someone walking upstairs. My bedroom was on the first floor, and above me was a small guest room I didn't use. I lay there for a while, trying to convince myself it was just the old house settling. But the longer I listened, the harder it was to deny what I was hearing. It wasn't random creaking. It was footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps pacing back and forth. I was frozen in bed, gripping the sheets like a kid. Eventually, I forced myself to get up and check. When I climbed the stairs, the footsteps stopped immediately, like whoever had been up there was listening for me too. The room was empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. Just a bare, dusty carpet. I turned on the light and stood there for a good 5 minutes, waiting for something to happen, but it was silent. Eventually, I convinced myself maybe I had been half dreaming and went back to bed. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more things started happening. Small at first, then escalating. I'd wake up to find kitchen cabinets open that I was certain I had closed. Lights would flicker when I walked into a room, even though the wiring had just been updated before I moved in. One night, I came home from work, unlocked the front door, and immediately noticed something wrong. The living room smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. No one in my family smokes, and I never allowed anyone in the house who did. When I checked the coffee table, there was a single cigarette butt sitting right in the center of it. I just stood there, staring at it for what felt like forever. The front door had been locked when I came in. All the windows were locked. Nothing else in the house was disturbed. It was just that one cigarette. I ended up throwing it away, spraying the place with air freshener, and telling myself maybe it had been left behind by the last tenant, and somehow I hadn't noticed until then. But I didn't believe that. From then on, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was in the house with me. Then came the night that sealed it for me. It was around midnight, and I was lying in bed scrolling on my phone. That's when I heard a noise. 3 sharp knocks. Not on the door, not on the walls, but on the window right next to my bed. I froze instantly. My bedroom window faced the backyard, and the yard was fenced in. There was no reason anyone should be back there, especially in the middle of the night. I didn't move. I just listened, my heart pounding. A few seconds later, the knocks came again, this time louder. Summoning all the courage I had, I yanked the curtain open, expecting to see some drunk neighbor or maybe even a raccoon. But there was nothing, just the darkness of my backyard. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I called my landlord. I didn't tell him everything, just that I thought someone might have been trying to break in. He sounded oddly dismissive, almost annoyed. He said he'd swing by later in the week to check the locks, but he never did. That same week, things escalated further. I started noticing small changes in the house, things slightly out of place, like the remote on the wrong side of the couch, or the bathroom mirror fogged up like someone had just taken a shower when I hadn't used it all day. The most disturbing was one morning when I woke up and went to make coffee. On the counter, beside the machine, was a sticky note that I hadn't written. It said, "Stop looking." I can't describe the feeling I had reading that. My knees went weak. I just stared at it, not even able to breathe. I tore the note up immediately, shoved it in the trash, and sat at the table for hours trying to piece together how it could have gotten there. Did I write it in my sleep? Did someone get inside while I was unconscious? Neither explanation made sense, but those were the only two options. After that, I started staying at my mom's house more often, making excuses about wanting to keep her company. But I always had to come back eventually. The breaking point came about a month later. It was a Friday night. I'd forced myself to stay at the rental, telling myself I was being paranoid. I tried to relax, watch some TV, and eventually dozed off on the couch. Sometime in the middle of the night, I heard whispering. It was faint, but it was there. Low voices coming from upstairs. I wanted to run straight out the front door, but something compelled me to move quietly, to listen. I crept up the stairs, heart hammering so loud I thought it would give me away. The voices grew clearer the closer I got to the guest room, the same room where I first heard footsteps. I stopped just outside the door, and the whispering stopped too. I don't know why I did it, but I opened the door. The room was pitch black. I fumbled for the light switch, but before I could find it, I heard movement in the dark, fast, heavy movement, like someone rushing towards me. I slammed the door shut and bolted down the stairs. I didn't stop to grab anything. I didn't stop to think. I just ran out of the house barefoot and didn't look back until I was in my car with the doors locked. I drove straight to my mom's, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. The next morning, I went back with a friend to grab some of my things. When we opened the guest room door in the daylight, the carpet was covered in muddy footprints. They weren't mine. And the worst part, the footprints led directly to the closet. Inside the closet was a small square section of drywall that had clearly been tampered with. My friend pried it open with a screwdriver, and behind it was a crawl space I had no idea even existed. Inside that crawl space were fast food bags empty water bottles, and a pile of clothes that didn't belong to me. Someone had been living in my house. The police got involved after that, but they never caught whoever it was. The working theory is that it was some squatter who found access through the crawl space and had been sneaking around while I was at work or sleep. But that doesn't explain the sticky note, or the cigarette, or how they knew to stop the moment I was listening. I moved out the same week. My landlord was furious I broke the lease, but I didn't care. I'd rather deal with the penalty than stay in that house another night. To this day, I still can't shake the feeling that whoever was in that crawl space hadn't just stumbled in there by accident. It felt personal, like they'd chosen me. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed at my new place, I swear I can still hear faint footsteps upstairs.